even with this revised version of Amendment B, I still have significant concerns. So I just want to explain my vote, which is to oppose Amendment B here, to make sure that we're being transparent about the trade-offs, even within this proposed amendment that's in front of us. Well, this amendment would allow housing to be built on the parking lot. I want to emphasize that it still significantly reduces the amount and the diversity of the type of housing that is possible to preserve a building that does not represent a unique character or rich history within our city. That is my opinion about the existing building. And it's also a fact that it is not going to create the same amount and the diversity in the type of housing that could be built. Under this amendment, we're talking about roughly half of the housing units that could be built, with some of the analysis that, yes, we have also talked to central staff about, but that we have vetted with community members who are actively working to create housing across our city. This amendment would result in about half the amount of units. The analysis that we've looked at is, instead of 219 units, that we would be looking at around 113 units. I know that the sponsor noted 310 and also noted that this is speculative policymaking, but if we're going to engage in speculative policymaking, I want to talk to folks on the ground who are actively working on creating housing and density and ask what the impact would be. And so it's 219 versus 113 from the back of the envelope estimate from the community stakeholders that I've checked in with. It is reducing the amount of the mandatory housing payment from approximately 3.53 million to about 1.82 million. So roughly half of the amount of affordable housing dollars could be generated back to the city under the existing proposed amendment that we're looking at. And again, I appreciate that we may have different numbers from the sponsor as well. We are all quickly working in full council to try to analyze the proposals in front of us, but that is the analysis that we currently have. And so when I look at half of the housing and half of the MHA payments under this proposal as compared to the substitute, I cannot support it when, again, this is an example of density in our city that is being built in an area that is welcoming to density near future light rail stations. And all of us have talked about how we want to make sure that we are not having development yield more pressure, pushing people out of our city or creating additional displacement in vulnerable neighborhoods. I believe that to be true. And I think that this is legislation where the substitute that's been put forward is an effort to create additional housing in one of our densest neighborhoods, not changing the footprint if that's one of your concerns. It's building near future light rail. It steps away from thousands of jobs, and it is on a site that is currently a single-story building. So maximizing the opportunity, not just for units, but for family-sized units. 1 and 2 bedrooms could be built here if they take advantage of the MFTE program. We're talking about potentially more 2 and 3 bedroom units for working families. This is something we've all talked about wanting, and it's in an area where there's already been agreement that building that type of dense housing and dense use is really desirable. I think that we would be sacrificing both housing diversity, family-sized housing units that are possible, the amount of housing total that we could see on the site, the amount of funding coming back in from MHA. And again, in order to preserve a site that I don't think fully reflects what the intent is for landmarking and mixed use and preserving the facade or the building for historic landmarks. I want there to be a clear message that this council and me specifically are supportive of historic landmarks. And I think the Liberty Bake building that was preserved, a landmark that was preserved that also complemented housing, is a great example of where we have shown, of course, we want to preserve historic landmarks and support the preservation of community and culturally rooted buildings and places. But in a location like what we're talking about right now, we have an opportunity to build not just density, but to build family-sized units of 1, 2, possibly 3, 4, 3 bedroom units. And that is something that I think we don't want to miss an opportunity.